We human beings are the only organisms that can make fire and can manage fire in the landscape. There's truth in the old saying that you fight fire with fire. The chief tool of the fire manager is the fire break, and in most places the fire break is made by burning a part of the country. Harm reduction is the primary objective of fire management, and a comprehensive fire break system is the main tool that is used to achieve that objective. In every particular place, there are secondary fire management objectives and considerations. In the district where I live, there are wetlands that produce more wild rice and more geese if they're burned in November. There are also some jungles, and it's traditional practice to burn a fire break around them, to protect them from fire and to secure access to the plant and animal foods that live in them. One of the animals that lives in these jungles is the flying fox. These large fruit bats provide vital ecosystem service to the surrounding forests and woodlands as both a pollinating agent and a seed distributing agent for the trees. Three things govern the productivity of an ecosystem: the availability of light and water to drive photosynthesis, and the recycling system that makes plant nutrients available once again for new plant growth. Fire has an important influence on these recycling systems. This is particularly so in places like Northern Australia, where there's very little in the way of nutrients in the soil. And most of the plant nutrients are actually tied up in the standing crop of plants and animals that grow on the soil. The situation that exists here in Northern Australia is very similar to the situation that exists elsewhere in the world, in the monsoon forest climate zone and the savanna climate zone. These are the zones that occupy the land areas between the equatorial rainforests and the mid-latitude deserts. In both the monsoon forest and the savanna climate zones, the climate is marked by a wet season in summer and a very long dry season in winter. There's enough rain to support a close canopy forest, a jungle community. The dry season is long enough that fire is a possibility in every year. Frequent fire can destroy the rainforest community and eventually create a grassland. There are some jungles and some grasslands in Northern Australia. Most of Northern Australia is covered with eucalyptus open forests and woodlands with a grassy understory. When these plant communities are burned too often, seedlings and young trees are killed, and there is a recruitment failure for the trees. In the area that I know best, near the city of Darwin, it seems to me that the very big trees that we see today were already very big in 1870 when the European invasion began here. The statistical information on the size structure of our forests that was reported in the government vegetation survey in 1992 supports that conclusion. It also supports the proposition that there's been little or no new recruitment of trees to the upper stratum of the forests and woodlands since about 1920. There was a terrible fire in 1920 after one very wet year that followed on from a long and terrible drought in which great damage was done to the land by the newly introduced cattle herd. There is evidence to demonstrate the fact that the trees used to be twice as big as they are today. There's a very occasional big tree, or more commonly, a very thick tree stump to show how big the trees used to be. I take it that the stunted forest that we see today is a consequence of fire reducing the effectiveness of the plant nutrient recycling systems in the soil. In our rainy season, plant nutrients are leached downwards in the soil, and they can be leached down beyond the reach of the tree roots. Almost leak-proof recycling is required if the ecosystem is to maintain its productivity. To achieve this peak performance, the nutrient recycling systems in the soil, the termites and the earthworms and so on, need to be well nourished themselves. When a fire runs through a landscape, it chemically decomposes the fallen wood, dry grass and leaf litter. Without fire, these materials would have been biologically decomposed as food for the recycling system in the soil. When the system is starved of food by the passing of a fire, some animal populations crash and the capacity of the system is reduced. In these circumstances, some nutrients will be washed out of the soil by the rains, and some other nutrients will be lost as fumes and particles up in smoke during the fire. These are the reasons why the productivity of our ecosystems has been greatly reduced since 1870. Many of our trees and bushes have been more or less sterilised by malnutrition. They do not flower at all, or they fruit very lightly. This has a serious effect on the production of seeds. As things stand today, there is very little new recruitment at the seedling stage and hardly any survival beyond childhood for the trees in our forests and woodlands. The publication of the booklet Into Oblivion, The Disappearing Native Mammals of Northern Australia in 2010 alerted us to a rapid decline in the size of small mammal populations right across Northern Australia in recent years. Three factors have combined to cause this ecological disaster. Firstly, the destruction of the ancient Australian society and its fire management systems by the European invaders and by the diseases that they brought with them. Secondly, by the introduction of exotic animals, the water buffaloes, the cattle, the pigs, the pussycats, the donkeys, and so on, and the diseases that came with them. And thirdly, by the introduction of new fire management practices that are related to the grazing of beef cattle. There was a time when some people saw the introduction of beef cattle and the creation of a system of pastoral leased land tenure as a logical first step in the process of national development in Northern Australia. We can now see that this was a very bad idea and that it has had terrible ecological consequences. I don't think that we'll be able to stop the present eco-catastrophe without getting rid of the cattle and the pastoral leases and developing a new capacity to manage fire in a very different way in the landscapes of Northern Australia. Human beings are the only animals that can make and manage fire in the landscape, and all of the rest of the biota depends absolutely on us for this critical fire management function. I think it would make good sense for us to put this ecosystem service role at the heart of our culture and our social organisation here in Northern Australia. There is no doubt in my mind that the most important infrastructure need in Northern Australia today is people living in the landscape to provide fire management services to the ecosystem. Fire management is a very information-intensive task. Good fire management requires good local knowledge, and an intimate familiarity with the local fire management considerations. The people who do this work need to live in the landscapes in question. As things stand today, hardly anybody lives in most of this vast landscape. Most of it is as deserted as the Sahara Desert. In 1992, the Council of Australian Governments unanimously adopted a national strategy for ecologically sustainable development. This event marked a turning point in our understanding of the word development and the meaning of the word pioneering here in Australia. Putting people back into the landscapes of Central and Northern Australia to manage fire is a logical first step in this new kind of pioneering, in my opinion. In my opinion, pioneering should be the act of exploring for and progressively occupying a harmonious and constructive role in the ecosystem. Surely this is the idea that is at the heart of the concept of ecologically sustainable development. Surely the very first step in the process of ecologically sustainable development in the vast empty areas of Central and Northern Australia must be strategic settlement to obtain control over fire. The need to obtain control over fire can provide us with a basic rationale for a minimum population size and a population distribution pattern. These logistical considerations can then define the need for such things as transportation and food supply systems. In our present emergency situation, we also need to develop a range of other ecological first aid and ecological nursing systems and services. There are weeds to combat and emu populations to restore. These other ecosystem services can be grafted onto the basic fire management population distribution pattern. Human beings are inevitably and quite unavoidably the fire management specialists in the ecosystem. There is no way that we can avoid our responsibility in this matter. We should get organised to do the job well. We should get on with it, and we should get very good at it. It is, when all is said and done, a very honourable and a very rewarding role to play. This is the idea that I want to share with you here today. Thank you very much.